Welcome to the 2023 Smithsonian Folklife Festival. For over 50 years, the festival has convened people on the National Mall to explore, exchange, and engage the power of culture and creativity in our lives today. This year, our two programs are the Ozarks, Faces and Facets of a Region, and Creative Encounters, Living Religions in the U.S. Add your festival stories to our social media with the hashtag 2023 Folklife. The Smithsonian Folklife Festival is produced by the Center for Folklife and Cultural Heritage and presented in partnership with the National Park Service. This festival is made possible by people like you, so visit festival.si.edu to join our community of contributors. We also receive federally appropriated funds, Smithsonian Trust funds, contributions from governments, businesses, foundations, and individuals, in-kind assistance, and food, recording, and craft sales. The festival strives to maintain an accessible and inclusive environment for visitors of all abilities. If you are in need of accessible seating options or assistance listening during this presentation, please see our venue manager volunteers wearing the Ask Me button for assistance. The Smithsonian has done a wonderful job of bringing the Ozarks out here to the National Mall in Washington, D.C., and we couldn't do it without the help of our sponsors, and I'd like to recognize them now. The Ozarks program is produced in partnership with Missouri State University. The program is supported in part by Missouri State University, Missouri Division of Tourism, Arkansas Tourism, University of Arkansas, Experience Fayetteville, the Wingate Foundation, the Committee of 100 for the Ozark Folk Center, Ozark Beer Company, Crystal Bridges Arts and Social Impact Accelerator Partnership, and the Missouri Folk Arts Program. The program received federal support from Latino Initiatives Pool, administered by the National Museum of the American Latino, the Asian Pacific American Initiatives Pool, administered by the Smithsonian Asian Pacific American Center, and the Smithsonian American Women's History Initiatives Pool. In-kind support comes from Montana Cans and Mountain Valley Spring Water. So, my name is Curtis Copeland, and I'll be presenting today about tourism and recreation in the Ozarks. I'm with an organization called the Society of Ozarkian Hillcrofters, and today we have a couple guys from the mountain bike community in the Ozarks, and also Anthony and Rebekah. They're from the Current River area, and they'll talk about the river culture in the Ozarks. So let me tell you a little bit about these folks. Here on my right is Seth Gebel. He's a mountain bike trail builder located in St. Louis, Missouri. He first got hooked on mountain biking in high school and has continued his passion through his company, Backyard Trail Builds. His knowledge of local geography and forests allows him to seamlessly incorporate his trails into the natural environment. Through his company and his YouTube channel, he shares his love of mountain biking and creative trail building with the world. To the right of Seth is Dave Schulz. He's also a mountain bike trail builder, also based in St. Louis. He co-founded a nonprofit group known as GORC, or Gork Gravity, that transforms undeveloped hills and former mining towns into mountain biking trails. Together, Dave and Seth and their teams look for ways to interconnect bike parks, trail systems, helping to turn the Ozarks into a mountain biking destination. Anthony, to the right of Dave, is Anthony Martin, is a gig maker from Ripley County, Missouri.
Shannon County.
Shannon County, that's right. By this time in the festival, I should have that memorized. That'll teach me to read so much. I knew that. Sorry about that, Anthony.
It's all right.
Shannon County, which has a beautiful current river running right through it. Anthony's the recipient of the Missouri Traditional Arts Apprenticeship Award and studies gig making under Master Gig Maker Ray Joe Smith.
Hastings.
Yes. A former student of Anthony's grandfather, Paul Martin, whose gigs were renowned throughout the Ozarks. And also is to the right of Anthony is Rebekah Martin. He's also from the same area. She assists Anthony in the gig making process. Gigs are a fishing tool used to gig for suckers and other kind of fish in the Current River. So today, let's start with Seth and Dave. Let's talk a little bit about the emerging tourism industry for the mountain biking. That's I'd say in the last 10, 15 years, it's really started to take off.
So I don't think we can speak about this, especially for the Ozarks, without initially mentioning the Walton Foundation and all that they've done for the northern Arkansas area. They basically made the standard. They changed the world of mountain biking, invested greatly in their communities, and I believe the number was, last time I saw, was somewhere around like 70 million they invested in their communities with a mountain biking or bicycling focused infrastructure and trail systems, and the return on it so far has been about 159 million when measured in tourism. They have really awesome medical studies that show the benefits for what few injuries come out of that change. The benefits over things like heart conditions and similar stuff have reduced so much over the last 10 plus years for their study. What we did in Missouri, we adapted a piece of that, and they helped actually guide us a little bit, and we came over and applied a new process to our state to bring our version of that. While they operate with a large budget, we operated with a $0 budget, but through time, building on the shoulders of, we have a 23-year-old nonprofit, which he named was Gorg. Gorg Gravity is about 3.5 years old now, a branch of that nonprofit. We do coaching for communities, and through that coaching process, we've helped communities develop about 7 million in parks. We look for environmentally disturbed areas and something else like surface mines, old logging areas, and we turn them into community parks with a tourism element, and that brings Seth in where we layered on top. I did want to mention one other element though, is that prior to us attacking it from that side, the O'Reilly family also made their mark with two rivers between Springfield and Branson area in an area called Nixa, and that was one of the first updated trail systems to exist as well through the O'Reilly Auto Parts family. But that leads me to Seth, who builds this extra flair, brings that Ozark art to life that we can actually ride and touch, and it becomes tangible.
Yeah, I built the thing back there that we do the demonstrations on. We ride that 4 times a day here. I built stuff like that all throughout the Ozarks now because of the example that Bentonville set in Arkansas. It's like they invested all this money and they got this huge return, and all of these other communities throughout the Ozarks saw their example, saw what it could do for a community in these super small towns. They're now getting these bike parks because they know it's going to increase health in the community, increase the economy, it gets tourism around. I have a YouTube channel where even if I build one of these little features throughout their trail system, I can get hundreds of thousands of views and eyeballs on it, and people will come from, we've heard far as Alaska just to come to a small town just to see it. So yeah, it's really taken over the Ozarks, and it's done just really good for the whole community there.
For Anthony and Rebekah, so over in southeast Missouri, the southeast Missouri Ozarks, we've got the Current River, the Jack's Fork, and just a beautiful part of the country. But the river tourism and recreation is a big deal there. Can you describe to our audience a little bit about the outdoor activities and tourism related to the river country over in southeast Missouri, Shannon County?
So the waters that we have are pretty crystal clear. They are fantastic to go just regular swimming, fishing, and floating. We have a lot of floaters on our rivers. You've got floats that can be 1 to 2 hours long. You can do floats that are 8 to 9 hours long, or you can do like a 2-3 day float and just camp along the gravel bar. I mean, it's just a beautiful area. You've got bluffs up on one side or the other, and you've seen some wildlife. My husband went on a float, and they actually got to see a bald eagle come flying down just above them. I mean, it's just a beautiful area. I can't get enough of it. They're never going to let me out of the state again because I keep talking about it so much.
It's pretty impressive. So we're part of the Ozark National Scenic Riverways in our area, and as Curtis mentioned, we've got the Ozark, the Current River, Jack's Fork River. We've also got the 11 Point, the Merrimack, things like that. And at any given time through the summer, you're going to see a few hundred people per day floating these rivers. We've had people come as far as northern parts of New York, Canada, Europe, just to float our rivers. And we also have the trail rides in Eminence, which is a really big thing for us. we've got people that come from all over the country, to ride our trails. And, a lot of our trails will take you right along Jack's Fork River or Current River, one of the two. And so it really does broaden the perspective whenever you take a step back and look at, okay, these tiny little towns of 600, 700 people are seeing an influx of 2,000 to 3,000 people in a week, or on any given weekend it might be 4,000 or 5,000 people.
Anthony and Rebekah, you talk about floating. So obviously that probably includes fishing as well, but a number of different activities on the water related to floating. So what kind of craft do they have? Different kind of boats might you find if you're visiting the Ozarks?
So typically, you're going to find us running a lot of flat bottom boats up there to do our fishing on in the rivers and stuff. But when you come down and you go floating, people will float in anything from a tube to a canoe to kayaks. We've definitely in the last 6 or 8 years seen a really, really large rise in the number of kayakers that come down our rivers. People will put in as far up as they can go, and then we've had people turn a float into a week-long float. So
I've done that.
it's pretty impressive. It's pretty grueling at times.
I can attest too from the mountain biking side that we've tied all of our stuff into the floating communities, but even myself, I had to, before even coming here, I floated, depending on your pronunciation, right, the Curtways or Curtaway, just before coming in, which is part of that river system. I lived on the Current, I grew up on the Current, so.
Okay, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So do these folks have to bring their own canoes and kayaks, or are there outfitters on the Current and Jack's Fork?
There are plenty of outfitters. Up and down Jack's Fork River and Current River both, there's anywhere from 3 to 6 canoe rental areas, within a 15-20 mile radius. Just about anywhere you look, and you can rent anything from a kayak to a tube. They'll set you up. Right there in Eminence, we've got Wendy's Canoe Rental, and then next to Alley Springs, we've got Harvey's, and I'd say those are the two biggest canoe rental locations in our area. You go down to Van Buren and you've got the Big Springs Canoe Rental. They're probably the second largest in our area. So they will handle anywhere from 300 people up to 1,200 people in a day's time.
I like Acres Ferry a lot as well.
Acres Ferry's a good one, yeah. They're a pretty good
Church.
size.
Yeah.
Yep. We actually floated from Acres Ferry down to, was it Poltide, this past year, so.
Yeah, that's super cool.
It was
That's one of my
impressive.
favorite floats.
Right. I wish they still had the ferry open.
Yeah.
Dave and Seth, so I know you all are also mountain bike enthusiasts and travel around. There's several tourist towns and in the Ozarks that have traditionally been tourist destinations for a variety of reasons. One that comes to mind that makes me think of mountain biking, which in the past would not, is Eureka Springs, Arkansas. And back in the 1880s, it became a tourist destination for its healing springs during that phenomena of spring waters having healing properties, and it continues today, not so much for that purpose, but up through the 1990s and 2000s, just a really diverse community with and a lot of arts, crafts, and so forth, along with the history. But in recent years, there's a downhill, I believe a downhill mountain bike track there. Have you guys tried that?
I happen to have been present for its initial inception and construction. I almost moved there, just loving that place so much before we started our help on the Missouri side. It was amazing to watch that change occur there. But the downhill park set a standard there. It's a shuttle based, so basically you ride from the top and it's gravity fed. So you use gravity to propel your bikes down, and then you ride a bus tram system back to the top. Extremely fun, very, very popular. All different levels of trail, but of course all the way up to top expert, things that a lot of people will take pause at and look at for sure. But that community is really neat. It's sort of, if you're familiar with like the super steep hills of San Francisco, the town is sort of built into the hillside in a similar fashion, but really eccentric, really unique. There's a big train history there, actually, and the town is elevated. So there's a town under the town that's hidden. You can see through the sewer grates of the old areas that were elevated like 15 feet in the air because of the mud and flooding, but it's got a huge history of the healing stuff that he mentioned with, there's all of these cave systems and natural springs, and so historically people would come in there. There was healing centers created actually, and a lot of them, you know, over time as we discovered what they really were doing, it got a little crazy, but there's a really neat history there combined with the mountain biking, and actually it's a motorcycle town as a matter of fact because of the twisty roads. That's a big part of it as well.
Yeah, it's got a lot of, I think there's like ghost tours of like the town. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but the town, supposedly, the city fell into the ground and then they just built on top of it.
In a sense.
Something like that.
There's a lot of
But yeah, it's really integrated. As mountain bikers, we go out there to ride this downhill park and then we'll spend days in the town just exploring all the stuff it has to offer.
Yeah. One of the restaurants is in a cave. I mean, you can't beat that.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah, even if you're not into mountain biking itself, you just want a neat place to explore, bed and breakfast kind of environment, it's absolutely worth it. And I don't want to get too much detail because it's kind of gory, but there is a huge gory history for their major hotel that's up on the mountain. You can take the tours and you can go and, yeah, there was, they had claimed healing capabilities especially for anything really, but especially for cancer patients, and none of it was true. And it fraudulently went on for a long time, and I believe it was actually the inception of the FBI when they were created. I believe they intervened in that place. So kind of a weird history.
And Dave, the Eureka Springs bike downhill, that has drawn a whole other group of visitors now and potential tourists, right? With some major competitions. Is that correct?
Yeah. There's top level events have happened there, things that would have never been able to occur otherwise. And to give you an idea of the impact that it has, I think one of the most noticeable things, that's a seasonal town. That seasonal town, once that mountain biking element started, became an all year round town. I watched restaurants progressively go from open a little longer through the day to open a few more months to open all year, to their schedules adjusted based on that additional level of tourism. And there's actually some big religious centers there as well, and they filed for bankruptcy actually, and they took note of what was going on, and through that process they invited the mountain bikers into their community and their space, and they're surrounding their grounds with mountain biking trails, and because of that they're still there. So it appears to have reversed their process as well and helped them from a tourism draw standpoint.
Anthony and Rebekah, how important is the river tourism to your communities in southeast Missouri? I mean, I know that of all the Ozarks, the southeast Missouri Ozarks is one of the most rural areas, and so you talk about these large events like the Eminence Trail Ride, and obviously during the summer months the canoe float trips and so forth. Is that a substantial part of the way of life and the economics of your area, the tourism?
Yeah, there's a big flux through the summer, but our winter months, not so much. It's too cold. When he's been out on the waters gigging at night, it's gotten cold enough that his hands have actually froze to the pole, and there's just not as many people over the winter months. So Eminence, that has the trail rides, they actually are pretty well dead over the winter months. So the summer is a huge thing for our community.
It brings in a lot of economic influx. It's amazing. I would say tourism probably accounts for about 50% of our income in that area through the summer.
So we had in Steelville,
Yeah.
that was their that's like a huge float town.
It really is, yeah.
And they had that same thing where half the year they're open, tons of tourism,
Right.
millions of dollars in revenue from it, and then winter months, nothing, it's dead. But yeah, put a mountain bike trail in, and then it kind of
Right.
balances that out a little bit.
So there's recently been a an ATV ranch go in off of 106 over there in Ennis. And there's been some talk of trying to get somebody down and put a mountain bike trail in that ranch. But I don't know if it's went any farther. So I need a card before we...
You need this guy.
Yeah, I need a card before we leave out.
Yeah, happy to help. So,
Awesome.
yeah.
Seth, I was noticing your shirt. You're wearing a Howler Bike Park shirt today, and one thing about the mountain biking, I'll call it a phenomenon. I hope that's okay. But it is really changing the face of tourism in a lot of communities. Now, Howler is within just a few minutes drive of Branson, Missouri, which has long been known for amusement parks and live music and so forth. But now we have Howler Bike Park just north of town, and I live in Ozark but work in Branson, so I do a lot of commuting. I drive right by Howler, and I know that their park is not even fully complete, and that their parking lot is always packed. So can you tell us a little bit about Howler and how that's changing the tourism in that area?
Yeah, so we talked about Eureka Springs. Eureka Springs is about an hour south of Branson. So Howler has, it's drawing this huge crowd. There's also Bentonville that's in Arkansas. Eureka Springs is in Arkansas. And Howler is like this little beacon just above there, drawing people into Missouri who were already mountain biking down in Arkansas. But it's completely, it's morphing that area in the same way that Bentonville did, of like setting this example that this is something that people want. And now, Springfield wants to do more stuff like that, which is north of it. And then Branson is trying to totally convert their image into like an outdoor adventure town versus what it used to be, which was, this kind of entertainment place to go to that is slowly, I want to say it's been going downhill, but I think they still make plenty of revenue there from it. But again, Howler is kind of just setting this example of like, you probably want this thing too alongside it.
So Dave, let me direct this question to you. What do you think was that turning point? Because, being in the Ozarks lends itself to mountain biking. It's got steep terrain, beautiful outdoors, just a great place for any kind of outdoor activity regarding trails, be it hiking, mountain biking, or otherwise. And I've had friends over the years that would go out into the Mark Twain National Forest and ride the old logging roads or fire roads, and even some folks that were skilled enough and brave enough to take on some of the off-road vehicle locations that have been around since the 70s, like Chadwick Off-Road Use Park and so forth. What do you think was that turning point to where it went from kind of a special, unique special enthusiast, mountain bike enthusiast activity to something that's mainstream?
Well, it's kind of a big question in a sense, because it was timing, I would say, is more than anything. So you have, again, Arkansas doing what they did to make that impact, but they couldn't have done that necessarily without also the technological advancements in cycling. So cycling had leaps and bounds advanced in the last even 5 years now. The technology advancements allowed a lot of people who maybe have less skill to ride more challenging areas. And so it brought more people in to the environment. And then you have people like Seth who throw it on YouTube, and that popularity, millions and millions of people seeing this are like, I want to be a part of this thing. And so you layer those all together. Missouri in particular, I would argue we had a lot of great cross-country systems all over, but we were missing that flary element, that feature-rich, as we call it, trail system. And that challenge, I realized, was just simply information. So the governments, they could see things happening, but they weren't part of the cycling community. They didn't quite understand what was occurring. And in order to translate that, they needed somebody to speak to them. And so that's kind of the role that we all fell into, where we're able to use our government background and combine that with our cycling backgrounds and help them to build these parks and to open that gate. But again, timing of all those things had to happen for this to become so great. And honestly, it's a compliment to things like the people I'm sitting next to with the water systems. Every place that we build, like, they have some connection to the water in Missouri, and that's a big element of it. And our caves, which we haven't mentioned, are also a big piece of that.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Dave, you talk about that that relationship between the mountain biking and the floating and even the hiking community. And Dave, you may be familiar with this, or Anthony or Rebekah, but I remember when I went to visit Current River around the Round Spring area, and the Park Service there had it was kind of a challenge. It was a challenge, and you could receive a patch or something if you're a visitor. But it was a loop. It included mountain biking, hiking, and kayaking or canoeing a section of the river. Have y'all seen that?
I actually hadn't heard anything about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not aware of the patch. That sounds pretty interesting, though.
Yeah, and so that's what I'm getting at is the Ozarks is a really neat place to be able to go there and enjoy a bunch of different outdoor activities in one location. Anthony, now you're here at the festival mainly with your skills as a craftsman with the gig making. In Southwest Missouri, Ozarks, we have the huge lakes like Table Rock, Bull Shoals, Beaver Lake, and so forth.
Yeah.
And traditional, what I call traditional fishing with bass boat or even a John boat on the lake is popular. Is traditional fishing still popular on Current River? Or more so than gig fishing?
I'm not sure if it's more so. I'd say they're pretty well equal. Current River does hold bass fishing tournaments every year, 2 or 3 times a year. So down around the Van Buren area and down towards Doniphan and stuff like that. But yeah, traditional fishing is still really popular. You know, there are a lot of people that will actually come from the southern part of Missouri up into, like, I'm talking down around the Arkansas line, up into our neck of the woods, Round Springs, Two Rivers, you know, places like that, and they'll smallmouth fish year round. And then we've got a lot of trout fishermen that come up too, up around Montauk area. You know, Montauk is it's the state trout hatchery pretty much. So yeah, I'd say traditional fishing is still pretty big.
Dave, how about the local tourism boosters, I guess, if you would call it, the chambers of commerce and so forth? Are they starting to market mountain biking more than they used to, outdoor activities more than in the past, as far as, you know, come to the Ozarks or come to Missouri or come to Arkansas? And, are you starting to see more talk about mountain biking or eco tourism types of things?
Yeah, very much so. So the south side from us, Arkansas, they have immense advertising from Chamber of Commerce to professional organizations. But on our side of Missouri, it was a lot more quiet in that specific category. But now it's greatly picked up. Seth actually was just showing me a text that came through from one of our local magazines called Terrain Magazine. They picked up the story from here that was written by people in Springfield, Missouri. So it kind of links all the way around, and it's spreading. We were invited out to the Capitol actually, and got to stand in front of the House and Senate, which was pretty neat thing. And the tourism chambers there took note and helped us, and we got a lot of FaceTime, and then all the local chambers that are within each of these communities have also stepped up their game for this as well. So yeah, it's definitely growing in advertising.
Awesome.
So this is kind of a question for across the panel here, but traveling and vacationing can get quite expensive. So is whether it be river outdoor recreation, floating, fishing, so forth, or mountain biking, do you all feel like that is something that the majority of folks can do, or is it are there any major financial barriers with this type of tourism activity?
As far as like our river activities and stuff, I think that's pretty affordable all the way across the board. You know, we have a lot of local Airbnb places, and people will come in and snag those up and stay in those for a couple days while they float the rivers. I mean, it's all really affordable, I think, in our area.
Well, that and the campgrounds are numerous, and we'll even camp right on the gravel bar. So You buy a tent, a couple of sleeping bags, and pack a cooler, and you can stay there for 2-3 days. And it might cost you $100 for 2-3 days to enjoy the outdoors, to enjoy the waters. I mean, you can swim all day long, get good and sunburnt, and just enjoy some fishing, hiking. You can see wild horses. I mean, you name it, you can do it for about $100.
I'd add in, while I'm all for privatization as well, and all of that, like Holler Bike Park, for example. Just for our sake, on the volunteer side, all of our projects that we help with are free and open to the public on purpose. There may be services that you can purchase. There may be something you can participate in that costs money, but the park's open to the public like any other park. So you can go visit, you can hike or walk, or we actually have 3- and 4-wheel trails. So for quad bikes or tri-bikes, we have the ability for those people that are, we have, like, for example, we have a few paralyzed riders, but they want access. Now they have trails that their bikes can traverse and be still fun for 2 wheels. And so pretty much we try to welcome everybody regardless of their affordability. It's drawn in groups like Boys and Girls Club took note of these parks, and they came in and made a donation combining with another bike company, so they gave a whole fleet of bikes to underprivileged children, and then the hospital took note and they provided all the helmets. So again, we try to make sure everybody can reach it, and like they said, you can find camping, and sometimes inexpensively or even free depending on where you go. You can definitely, with a tight budget, still enjoy these activities for sure.
Yeah, and if you don't have a bike, most of these places have a bike shop that rents them out for $25, $35.
Oh, no.
You can
Yeah,
rent for a full day. Yeah,
That's
and they're like nice bikes.
Yeah.
Very good. Well, is there anything that I may have overlooked that any of you would like to add about the river tourism or mountain bike tourism in the Ozarks that I may have overlooked?
I could say I did want to mention Ironton. They seem to be one of the epitome of it. While Steelville and all these places are doing great things, Ironton sort of got forgotten a little bit because a lot of the parks that are nearby are just north of it. So you come from our major area, St. Louis, you visit the park, I'm sure you guys experience it, you turn around, you go back, right? So how do you get them to go that little bit further? And that's where this mountain bike park in the heart of Ironton and heart of what they call the Arcadia Valley, which is a tri-town area, that changed things. And so we have right surrounding the town, you have places, we have what we call shut-ins, right? So like Johnson shut-ins, our river systems cut into the ground over billions of years.
Oh yeah.
And to a normal person, if you go look at it, it doesn't look that way. It actually looks like the rocks jutted up through the rivers. And so you can go visit these areas, you can go floating in these same areas, and then you can go hiking or mountain biking. You can see, if you like geology, if you like history, there's all this Civil War stuff. And just the way it fell, Ironton happens to have all of that right there and accessible, including they even have the whitewater rafting that happens on the St. Francis River during the seasonal times.
So that's something else I forgot about.
Yeah, there's full on like a big competition each year in whitewater, like kayaking and like it's a huge thing, and that's pretty close to Ironton, I think.
It is.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's you said St. Francis River, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah,
it's all
not
right
that
there
far
at all.
Yeah. Yeah, and I believe what else is near them is the Black River.
Yeah, Black River, Big River.
Yeah, Big River. So there's a lot of good stuff, but I'm a little biased. As these guys, I think, prefer the crystal clear waters. That's my preference.
That's right.
I've not been proved wrong yet. Nobody has disagreed with me that has been on our waters, that has come through and listened. They've all pretty well agreed that it's crystal clear waters.
Yeah, for sure. So.
Do you have any questions from the audience?
Hey, Tom.
Yeah, Tom. Hey.
Yes, Tom. Hello, Tom.
So I've been wondering, like, what's up with Dog Patch? And as I can tell, it's going to be like another Dogwood Canyon nature park, I guess Johnny's calling them. I'm guessing that's kind of geared towards an older demographic. I've never been down there in a Dogwood Canyon, but
I haven't either.
how do you?
You mean like the manufactured place where they kind of?
It's like they kinda make
I think
it-
they like dug in the. How's that? You know about that place?
The name rings a bell, but I'm not
I
too
think it's like
familiar.
a man-made waterfall or something. They like.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
knocked
So
out.
is that the one where they can endlessly kayak? Is that one or?
Oh, I don't know.
sure.
Oh no, this is a different one. Excuse me. They're trying to design they will do a man-made thing on the edge of a river like St. Francis. They haven't done this in St. Francis I'm aware of, but like St. Francis, and they'll create the water environment necessary for the kayakers to just relive the same experience. But no, dogwood was your question though, and what you were asking
more
about?
dog patch.
Dog.
He bought that 2 years ago.
Yeah, Tom. As with what I know about it, which isn't much, and usually with Johnny's projects, they're under wraps until the last. But to me, if I was to have a crystal ball or be able to make an educated guess, because of its location nearby to the Buffalo River, I mean, it's just within a couple miles of the Buffalo, and because of the terrain, I would think that it would include, maybe it might include some downhill, but it's definitely I would think that would incorporate some river activities as well on the Buffalo. But what we do know, it'll be well done. There'll be a lot of money put into it for sure. But Dog Patch used to be in the very very late 60s, early 70s up to the early 1990s was an amusement park down in Newton County, Arkansas, along the Buffalo River that had a theme after Al Cap's little Abner comic book series. So that's all about hillbillies and stuff like that. So, but now the owner of Bass Pro Bass Pro Shops has acquired the property and turning it into more of an outdoor type of experience. So, good question, Tom. I don't think we'll know the answer until he opens the curtain on that project, but that's a good question. Anyone else? Well, let's have a round of applause for Seth and Dave and Anthony and Rebekah. Thank you all so much.